Have you ever felt like you're being pulled in two different directions at once? That's exactly what we're diving into today with this explainer on Sahaj Karkoli's incredible book, But What Will People Say? It's really a guide for anyone who's ever felt caught between the culture you live in at home and the one just outside your front door. It's all about identity, pressure, and ultimately finding the courage to listen to your own voice. Right from the very first page, the book opens with this dedication, and it just sets the tone so perfectly. It's more than just words. It's an invitation. It's saying to anyone who's ever felt like they don't quite belong in either world, hey, I see you. You're not the only one. This is a safe place for you. So, let's get into it. This first section is all about that central conflict, that constant tug of war. What does it actually feel like to live with a foot in two completely different worlds, where each one has its own playbook, its own rules, its own expectations? And this, right here, lays out that daily tension so clearly. On one side, you have all the normal stuff of an American childhood, school dances, sports, sleepovers. But on the other side, you've got this entirely different set of immigrant expectations. For the author, and for so many others, every one of those normal things was seen through a different lens. A school dance was a distraction from your studies. Having male friends was a threat to your purity. It was this constant, exhausting negotiation between two totally different scripts on how to live your life. This idea is just so important because it gets to the heart of the emotional tangle. The book makes it clear that you don't have to pick a side. You can be deeply grateful for the sacrifices your parents made, for all the ways they provided for you, and at the same time, you can acknowledge that maybe your emotional needs weren't really met. Both of those things can be true. They're not canceling each other out. They can and they do exist together. So where does all this pressure lead? Well, in Section 2, we see that for a lot of people, trying to live this double life eventually leads to a crisis. For the author, the sheer weight of expectations, especially the pressure to succeed in a pre-med program that she was actually failing, it all just became too much to bear. And you can see how this vicious cycle starts. The more she struggled, the harder she had to pretend everything was great, all to protect her family's reputation. It's this paralyzing all-or-nothing mindset, where if you're not a perfect success, you must be a total failure. So you build this facade, which makes you feel more and more isolated and ashamed, which just makes you want to hide even more. It's a feedback loop that's so easy to get trapped inside. And this quote is such a critical piece of the puzzle. When she finally did break down, her parents could only process it as a career problem, an educational derailment. It was easier for them to focus on a practical, solvable issue because it was a way to avoid sitting with the messy, scary reality of her emotional pain. It was a language they were just never taught themselves. So, if you're stuck in that cycle, how in the world do you get out? Well, the turning point, the real breakthrough, comes from finding a new vocabulary. The author discovers that these concepts from psychology and therapy actually give her the words to understand what she went through, and maybe for the first time to validate her own experience. The first key term here is stoicism, and we're not talking about ancient Greek philosophy. In this context, it's a survival mechanism. Think about it. For a generation that went through incredible hardship, you had to suppress your emotions just to get by. But when that skill gets passed down, it can turn into a barrier, teaching the next generation that showing your feelings is basically a form of weakness or complaining. And that connects right into this next idea, intergenerational trauma. It's the concept that the emotional echoes from huge events, like the partition of India, don't just vanish. That fear, that anxiety, that survival-first mindset, it can all be passed down through behaviors, stories, and warnings, shaping the lives of kids who are born decades later in a totally different world. And finally, there's enmeshment. This term describes a family where the boundaries are just really blurry. It's hard to tell where your feelings end and someone else's begin. You might end up absorbing your mom's anxiety or your dad's disappointment like it's your own, which makes it nearly impossible to figure out who you are as a separate person. This visual really captures what enmeshment feels like, right? You're just trapped in this one giant, tangled, messy circle with your family. There's no personal space, no clear lines, and everyone's emotions are all knotted together. But the goal of healing isn't to just cut ties completely. It's about turning that tangled circle into something more like a Venn diagram. It's about creating a space that is just for you while still having that important area of overlap where you can connect in a healthy way. The key word here is differentiation, not disconnection. Okay, so you've got the language, you understand the why behind so much of this. Now what? This final section is all about the how, the actual actionable tools you can use for healing and for taking back the pen to write your own life story. The book lays out this really clear path forward. It starts with just learning to identify your feelings without judging them. From there, you can start setting boundaries, finding a community that gets the real you, and maybe even considering therapy, not as a sign of weakness, but as a courageous act of self-care. And it all leads up to this final, powerful step, rewriting your story. I love this list of practical mindset shifts. And honestly, this first one is a total game changer. Practice disappointing people. It's such a powerful reframe. You're not wronging someone by saying no, you're just not meeting an expectation. And look at that last point. It brings everything full circle. Learning to see your bicultural identity not as a burden, but as your own unique superpower. And as we wrap things up, this final quote just offers so much relief. A lot of times for children of immigrants, the family history has gaps, things that were never spoken about. This quote is like a permission slip. It says your feelings, your experiences, your story, they're all valid, even if you don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. You can trust your own truth. And that leaves us with this final question to think about. After you understand the cycles, after you find the words, the power really does shift back to you. The book is an invitation to finally pick up the pen yourself. So, what's the first sentence of that new chapter you're ready to write?